Welcome back, students. This is another organ, or means to say artery from the infratemporal region, an important artery of the infratemporal region. Now the question is, describe the maxillary artery. Describe the maxillary artery and its branches. Okay, we will see the extent of maxillary artery, and then we will classify into the various part of the maxillary artery, and then we will learn about the branches and the distribution of these branches. Okay. So let us see. This artery is one of the terminal branch of the external carotid artery. Okay, let me show you the diagram first. It is the terminal branch of the external carotid artery which is given behind the neck of the mandible. Okay, see this diagram here. So this artery is the terminal branch. This is that maxillary artery. I will just write here. This is the external carotid. I am writing here the external carotid. This is going behind the TM joint. Okay, as it will reach close to that of the neck of the mandible. Okay, this will divide into two terminal branch. This branch is called as the maxillary branch, which will go deep to the neck of the mandible into the infratemporal region. Okay, this is infratemporal region. So this is the maxillary artery, the main artery of the infratemporal, and then it will go right up to the face. Okay, so this other artery here, which is the terminal branch, is called as the superficial temporal. This is superficial temporal branch. So these are two terminal branch, a maxillary artery and superficial. They are terminal branch of the external carotid artery. You please keep on drawing with me. And then this maxillary artery will run forward, first deep to that of the neck of the mandible, and then it will reach up to the lower border of the this is lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, this is the lateral. So let us see first the extent, and then we will see the parts of the maxillary artery. Okay, in extent, okay, you can note down that this artery extends from the neck of the mandible, just behind the neck of the mandible, up to the pterygopalatine fossa. This will go into the pterygopalatine fossa, which lies deep to the pterygomaxillary fissure. In this diagram, you can see that this is maxilla, these are maxillary teeth are here, this is the lateral pterygoid plate is here, from on which this lateral pterygoid muscle is attached. Okay, and then this is a gap here, the fissure is here, which I have just drawn a little more wider just to explain you. This is the pterygomaxillary fissure, and just deep to this pterygomaxillary fissure will lie the pterygomaxillary fossa or pterygopalatine fossa, right? So deep to is the fossa, and this is from here to here is its extent. Okay, so the artery extend from neck of the mandible to that of the pterygopalatine fossa, and it is divided into three parts. So just see how it is divided, artery in the infratemporal fossa, into the three part. The first part lies below the lower border of the lateral pterygoid muscle. As I said that this is the lateral pterygoid, the lower head I have drawn. I have not drawn the upper head of the lateral pterygoid just to avoid the congestion in this diagram. So it is only the lower head of the lateral pterygoid is drawn here. So the first part where the artery is going up to the lower border of the lateral pterygoid. See, this is the lower border of the lateral pterygoid, and this artery is going. So I will just draw a dotted line with this pencil, okay, so that you will see that this part, right from its origin up to the lower border or margin of the lateral pterygoid muscle, this is the first part. This is the first part of the maxillary artery. Okay, I hope you have understood how to divide into the first part. Okay, then this second part, okay, second part lies on superficial surface of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid. See this? Then it is leaving the superficial surface. So I will draw one dotted line here just to tell it that between this lower border to that of the upper border, okay, where it is lying onto the superficial surface of the lateral pterygoid muscle, okay. This is the second part of the the maxillary artery, second part. I hope that you have understood. And the third part is from the upper border here, from the upper border of lateral pterygoid muscle to the pterygomaxillary fissure. As I said that this is pterygomaxillary fissure between pterygoid plate and that of the posterior surface of the body of the maxilla. So this is a fissure here, a narrow fissure, that is called as pterygomaxillary. Okay, that will be the third part, and in the pterygomaxillary fossa or pterygopalatine fossa, this will divide into various branches, terminal branches. So this is the third part, right up to the pterygopalatine fossa, okay, where it will divide in its terminal branch. So first part, second part, and third part of the maxillary. Please keep on noting whatsoever I am telling you, okay, along with this diagram, okay. Now let us come to the branches of this important maxillary artery in the area, okay. Branches from first part. Let us see the branches from first part. Now, the first branch which comes out is going upward, okay. There are two branches in fact taking origin between its origin and the posterior border of the neck of the mandible. These are two small branches taking origin. And the first branch which takes origin is called as anterior tympanic. Just note down, anterior tympanic branch, okay, anterior tympanic. And it passes through the pterygopalatine fissure or pterygotympanic fissure. There is a fissure, okay, between the pterygotympanic fissure. And through this pterygotympanic fissure, it will go into the middle ear, okay, pterygotympanic fissure, which will go into the middle ear, okay, and here in the middle ear, okay, which is a cavity, middle ear cavity. So this small branch will go through the fissure into the middle ear cavity, where it will supply to the mucous membrane of the middle ear and the inner aspect of the tympanic membrane, okay, inner aspect which is facing toward the middle ear cavity. That means all the mucous membrane lining to the cavity will be supplied by this anterior tympanic branch, okay. So this go through the pterygotympanic fissure. It will be going inside the middle ear by the pterygotympanic fissure. Pterygotympanic fissure. Just write down pterygotympanic fissure, okay. Then the second branch is here, and this second branch I will just give it name here, okay. See, I am just drawing this line of labeling, and I will name it here as deep auricular artery, deep auricular artery, right. This was external carotid. I will say this was anterior tympanic first branch, and second branch is the deep auricular artery, right. Now this deep auricular artery, it supplies to the TM joint, okay. It supplies to the temporomandibular joint. As I told you, the branches from the, while I was just teaching you the temporomandibular joint in last video, I tell that the branches, small branches will come from the maxillary and the superficial temporal artery to supply the joint. So this is deep auricular artery, which will supply not only to the TM joint, that is temporomandibular joint, it will also supply to the external acoustic meatus. See here, this is the location of the external acoustic meatus. So this will send branches to the ear, okay, external acoustic, its skin and the cartilage, okay, external acoustic meatus and the external surface of the tympanic membrane. Now, so remember that the anterior tympanic, which was going into the middle ear cavity, was supplying the deep surface of the tympanic, and this is supplying the external surface along with the external acoustic meatus, that is deep auricular artery. Okay, deep artery. I hope that you have understood this, the two different branches here. Okay, then comes the middle meningeal artery, and then will come the middle meningeal artery. And this middle meningeal artery is the branch which will go into the spinosum foramina or foramina spinosum to the middle cranial fossa. This one is the middle meningeal artery. Okay, just below that of the lower margin of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Middle meningeal. This is actually the third branch. The first and second branch were anterior tympanic. Second was the deep auricular. This is the third middle meningeal, and it will go from the base of the skull through the foramina spinosum, along with it will lie close to the auriculotemporal nerve, and then it will go to supply the dura mater and the base of the middle cranial fossa. Okay, the middle cranial fossa, meningeal branch. So it will supply to the meninges, dura and arachnoid. Okay, so this is the middle meningeal. Let us see the fourth branch. This is the fourth branch, and this fourth branch is called as accessory meningeal artery. Accessory meningeal artery. This was middle meningeal, and this is accessory. This is in addition to that of the middle meningeal artery, and this will pass again to the middle cranial fossa through the foramina ovale, through which the mandibular nerve is coming out. This will go in, okay, from the same foramina, okay, to the middle cranial fossa. Here again it will also supply the dura mater, but it will also supply the trigeminal ganglion, which is lying on the anterior surface of the petrous temporal bone near its apex, okay, in the trigeminal impression, okay, under the dura mater, that is the cavum trigeminale, okay, and this will supply to the trigeminal ganglion, which from its anterior margin is dividing into the ophthalmic, maxillary and mandibular nerve. And this will also supply blood to the part of the mandibular nerve where it is taking origin from this ganglion. This is ganglion. This is accessory meningeal, which passes into the middle cranial fossa through the foramina ovale. Then come to the fifth branch, and fifth branch is here, and this is called as the inferior alveolar artery. Inferior alveolar artery. Alveolar means to the alveolar process of the lower jaw, that is the mandibular alveolar process in which the roots of the teeth are placed within. They are just there inside the alveolar fossa, okay, alveolar process, okay. Roots are embedded in it, okay, of the mandibular teeth, That's why it is called inferior alveolar, because superior alveolar is from the process is for maxillary teeth, okay. This is for the mandibular or lower jaw teeth. It lies in the mandibular canal. First it will go into the mandibular canal, okay. And in the last video I have shown that on the medial surface of the ramus of mandible there is a mandibular foramina, and through this mandibular foramina will go this inferior alveolar artery along with the inferior alveolar nerve to run into a canal called as the mandibular canal, and in this it will supply the blood to the lower jaw. Lower jaw means not only through the bone, but it will supply to the teeth, it will supply to the on the external surface through this mantle branch, it will supply to the skin near the chin, it will also supply the mucous membrane of the gum. Okay, so the lower jaw is supplied by this inferior alveolar artery. Okay, so it is the main blood supply to the lower jaw is from this inferior alveolar artery, which is the fifth branch from the first division. Okay, from the first division. Let us go to the branches. So there are 5 branches from first division. Now we are dealing with the branches which are taking origin from the second part, and second part lies superficial to the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, lower head of the lateral. And which are the branches? Artery to masseter, this branch. it is artery to masseter muscle. Okay, masseter muscle. That means which is lying on the superficial surface of the ramus of mandible. So through the mandibular notch, this artery will wind round and go deep to the masseter muscle here to supply along with the masseteric nerve. Okay, so this is the, I think it is the first branch from second part. So I will just write first branch from that of the second part. Then there will be the pterygoid arteries. Okay, and this pterygoid arteries means it will go to the lateral pterygoid. So here I am giving it name. Okay, or let me first complete these two branches which are going upward, and this will be the second branch. Okay, because they are in multiple numbers, so I give it a name as only the second. And these are deep temporal arteries. They are the deep temporal arteries, and they are going deep to the temporalis muscle in the temporal fossa, where they will supply the temporalis muscle. So these are the deep. There may be two or there may be three branches going upward deep to the temporalis muscle. So these are the deep temporal arteries. And then the third branch comes here. That is, this is the third branch from the second part, and this is the pterygoid arteries. And I have just drawn one. There may be multiple, which is going and supplying to the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, lateral pterygoid muscle. That's why it is called as pterygoid artery. Just I will name it here. Pterygoid arteries. Not artery, arteries, because they may be multiple. Pterygoid arteries. And lastly, from the second part, there is a long artery going, and that is the buccal artery. And this is the fourth branch from second part. And this is the buccal artery. Buccal artery, which will go to the cheek. Okay. This is the fourth artery from taking origin. Okay, it is the buccal artery, and it supplies the skin and mucosa of the cheek. Okay, skin and mucosa of the cheek. So there are four branches, okay, named branches, which will supply the blood of the area of the infratemporal fossa and to going right up to the cheek and to the masseter muscle. So I hope you have understood the branches taking origin from the second part, where artery is lying superficial to the lateral pterygoid muscle. Let us come to the branch of the third part. And third part means from the upper border of the lateral pterygoid, okay, lower head, going right up to the fossa. That is the pterygopalatine fossa. Okay, it is going to the fossa. And then in this fossa, I mean to say the third part artery, before it enter into the fossa, this will give in the branches. Okay, this will give the branches, and these are the I mean to say before that it will give the branch which is called as the greater palatine artery. I think this I should take it as number one from greater palatine artery, as it lies in the pterygomaxillary fissure. Okay, pterygomaxillary fissure. This artery is given, and this runs downward in the fissure, and then it goes into the canal. It runs into a canal. Okay, and this supplies to the, I mean say, through the greater palatine canal. It runs in the greater palatine canal, and then it supplies the blood to the hard palate, to the soft palate, and to the tonsil and the part of the nasal cavity. Okay, and the part of the nasal cavity. So this will go directly downward from fissure into that of the greater palatine canal, and will divide into the greater and lesser palatine also. Okay, the greater palatine artery will divide, I mean say, will supply to the hard palate, to the soft palate, to the tonsil, and to the part of the nasal cavity. Okay, actually the lesser palatine supplies to the soft palate and tonsil in the part of the nasal cavity. Okay, greater palatine supply most of the part of the hard palate. Okay, most of the part of the hard palate. right? This was the first branch from the third part. Third part. And then we come to the branch which is, I will tell that the second branch which is given from when it lies in the fissure itself, okay, not only a single branch but they are multiple branches, okay, which are ultimately divided into fine branches on the posterior surface of the body of the maxilla. This is the posterior surface of the body where the maxillary molar teeth are attached here, and multiple foramina you will see. If you will try to find out we'll try to see the posterior surface of the maxilla, there are multiple foramina are seen, and these are for multiple branches of the artery which is called as the posterior superior. It is called as posterior superior alveolar arteries. Alveolar. Here we had called is the inferior alveolar. So this branch, the fifth branch from first part was inferior. This is the branch that is superior alveolar because it will supply the alveolar process and the teeth of the maxilla, that is upper jaw. That's why it is called as superior. Okay, it is called as superior. So it will supply the molar and premolar teeth. Okay, molar and the premolar teeth. Then this artery will go inside the fossa, pterygopalatine fossa or pterygomaxillary fossa, in deep inside, okay, which is a triangular fossa, okay, which is a triangular small narrow fossa, okay, where the maxillary artery, maxillary nerve with the sphenopalatine ganglion is also present, okay, and here it will give a branch which is called as infraorbital artery. This will give infra. So the third branch will be the infraorbital branch. So I will just name it as third. It is already written here. Infraorbital branch. Okay. And this will run in the orbit. Why? It is called infraorbital because through the infraorbital fissure, okay, it will come into the orbit, in the floor of the orbit, and will lie in the infraorbital groove and infraorbital canal. Okay, it will run. So this is artery enters the orbit through infraorbital fissure and reaches the face. Okay, it will reach to the face. Here is a foramina, that is the infraorbital foramina, which lies just below the lower margin or the lower border of the orbit. Okay, orbital opening. There is a big foramina here on the surface of the face in the maxilla, and this is the infraorbital foramina, and in this through this foramina the artery will come out on the face. It will reach the face, okay, and it will supply the orbit where it lies in the infraorbital groove and the infraorbital canal. It will supply the orbit, and then after coming out it will supply to the skin of the face. That means the upper lip, the side of the nose and the cheek, okay, and the lower lower eyelid will be supplied. That means all the neighboring area which is there, nose, upper lip, the lower eyelid and the prominence of cheek, skin, okay, skin, okay, to the various part of the skin on the face will be supplied by this third branch from the third division, that is infraorbital, okay. Then let us see a branch which will go and supply the artery of the pterygoid canal, and this will go backward through the pterygoid canal. That is called as artery of the pterygoid canal. Okay, it is not drawn here, but you can remember that this artery will go in the pterygoid canal, through which was coming the nerve of pterygoid canal from greater petrosal nerve and the deep petrosal nerve, which forms the nerve of pterygoid canal, and comes to this fossa, okay, into this fossa where they go and supply the fibers to the pterygomandibular ganglion, okay, pharyngeal and pterygopalatine ganglion, pterygopalatine ganglion. Now this artery of the pterygoid canal, this branch will pass backward to the pharynx. It will go backward to the pharynx through the pterygoid canal and will supply the mucous membrane of the pharynx, pharyngotympanic tube and the tympanic cavity. That means middle ear cavity. Okay, tympanic cavity means the pharyngotympanic tube, which also opens into the middle ear cavity, and this blood supply will go right up to there. So this is the supply of the pterygo supply the pharynx. It will supply the pharynx, okay, pharyngotympanic tube and the tympanic cavity, okay, it will supply. Now the pharyngeal branch, let us come to the pharyngeal branches, okay. So I think this was the fourth was the artery of pterygoid canal, which I have not shown. Let me draw it if I can. So the artery of pterygoid canal from this will go backward. It is going backward to the pharynx. And similarly the pharyngeal artery will also go backward. So that fourth was the pharyngeal pterygoid, artery of pterygoid canal. Pterygoid, just note down, pterygoid canal. And the fifth will be the pharyngeal branches. Pharyngeal branches. And what are the pharyngeal branches? These branches, okay, the pharyngeal branches, they supply the this also passes backward. As I saw, the artery of the pterygoid canal passes backward, and this also passes backward through another canal, not through that of the pterygoid canal, but it is passing through that of the palatino-vaginal canal. It is passing through palatino-vaginal canal and will supply the roof of the nasopharynx, auditory tube, and the sphenoidal air sinus, right? Okay, then comes the sixth branch, and the sixth branch is the Sphenopalatine artery, okay? The Sphenopalatine artery. See, this is all written here. The sixth branch is the Sphenopalatine artery is the sixth branch. And this Sphenopalatine artery, as the name suggests, it will after origin from as a terminal branch, it will immediately go into the Sphenopalatine foramina, which lies on the medial wall of this fossa, pterygo-maxillary fossa, okay, or pterygo-palatine fossa. It will immediately go through this foramina to the nasal cavity, okay, where it will supply the blood to the mucosa of the nasal cavity. Which one? This is Sphenopalatine artery. Sphenopalatine artery, that is the sixth branch. So there are so many branches taking origin from first part. At least there are 5 branches, then 4 branches from second part, and at least 6 branches they are taking origin from that of the third part. So it has a large area of supply right from the middle ear cavity to the face, okay, middle ear cavity, and various structure in its course they are supplied by this maxillary artery. And that's why the maxillary artery is important artery, usually asked in the examination. And then coming lastly on to the applied anatomy of this maxillary artery. Now the rupture of its middle meningeal branch, okay, this was the third branch. See this middle meningeal, this branch which passes through the foramina spinosum into the middle cranial fossa, that this artery is usually gets ruptured because in accident, because here while it is going to the middle ear case, anterior branches from foramina spinosum passes through the area pterion. You must have seen on the lateral aspect of the skull there was an area pterion, and it lies deep to the area of pterion, and thus it is just lying deep to the skull bone. And this is the artery which is very frequently ruptured here in this region of pterion, deep to the pterion area. And this leads to the collection of the blood superficial to the dura mater, that is between the dura and the skull bones, endosteum and the periosteum, okay, endosteum, between 2 layers of endosteum and periosteum, as you will learn later. Bleeding may be a large, and this, if it is quite large bleeding, then it will compress the cerebral cortex, okay, which is lying here. It will compress to the cerebral cortex, and this will produce lot of sign. The brain will shift to the opposite side, and compression effect will be there, and as soon as this clot or hematoma, as it is called as extradural hematoma, after its rupture, it is removed, okay, that pressure is removed, then the condition will return to normal. Otherwise it is a dangerous condition, okay, may lead to the death, okay, if it is not treated right. So this completes the course of maxillary artery, its division into three parts, and the branches taking origin from each part, and the distribution of each branch of the maxillary artery, and then the applied importance in relation to the middle meningeal artery. This completes the video. Thank you very much for watching this maxillary artery video.